The Syria crisis. We're joined by PJ Crowley, former U.S. State Department spokesman, who's seen it all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You know, our correspondent mentioned embarrassing for Ban Ki-moon. What are the repercussions, in your mind, if any, now that the UN has withdrawn its invitation to Iran?
I think this underscores the very complex politics that surrounds the Syrian peace process, and the United Nations and Ban Ki-moon finds himself squarely in the middle. I don't think this will have necessarily an immediate effect. It will change the atmospherics for the meeting in Montreux. If Iran was inside the room, there could be fingers pointed at it for its negative role in the Syrian crisis. Now there will be kind of circular finger pointing, focusing on the United States, the United Nations, and Iran. So, but it underscores that it's useful to have the beginning of a diplomatic process. Ultimately, the Syrian crisis will only be resolved diplomatically, but it underscores how difficult this is, and this is the beginning of a very long process.
Did the UN then bow to pressure from the United States to withdraw its offer? And just talk to us about what was possibly happening behind the scenes here.
I think behind the scenes, Ban was in fact facing the collapse of the process before it began. It wouldn't surprise me if the Syrian opposition was suggesting, if Iran is in the room, we won't be. Clearly, the United States did express its disappointment, its objections to inviting Iran without a public affirmation of the Geneva principles. And as Nick said, the fact that Iran was not willing to repeat in public the assurances it likely did give Ban Ki-moon in public, or in private, suggests that Iran itself is torn. You have the more moderate factions probably represented in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that wants to see Iran be a part of this process, wants to see Iran succeed in the nuclear talks that are going on. And you've got a hardline process, a hardline faction in Tehran that could not bring itself to say that it was willing to contemplate a Syria without Bashar al-Assad.
Talk to us about Russia and how it may help move this process along. Russia and the United States obviously work together to get the chemical weapons out of Syria. How can they work together now to move Syria along?
Well, I think there's a limit to what outside powers can do in Syria. We think of Syria as one crisis. It's actually several conflicts wrapped into one. You've got the conflict between the Syrian government and the opposition, between Saudi Arabia and Iran, between Hezbollah and Israel. And then the one thread that actually combines all of these governments and all these countries with an interest in Syria is everyone's concern about the emergence of the most extreme elements that have now got a toehold in Syria, and you'd like to prevent them from getting a foothold, a firmer foothold and actually control territory. That may be the thread that over time allows for some cooperation. But again, this is the start of a process that's useful, but this is going to take months. It could perhaps take years before you have the emergence of conditions that enable a diplomatic breakthrough.
All right, PJ Crowley, as always, we appreciate your time and your perspective.